Hey Luke, just finished watching your video, and I have a couple things. I'm going to try and spread this out over 2 videos and hopefully address one of your questions. You asked a series of good questions, which I think are very good questions. And incidentally, there's a lot of literature that could be used to substantiate an argument for each one of those questions. And I'm just burdened by time. I won't be able to do it all. But there is a couple things that I want to get at. The first thing, in my view, is that you okay. First of all, I'd like to outline that your claim that anarchism is defined in opposition to statism is well grounded theoretically. It's true. Often an antithesis is defined in relation to the thesis, except there's exceptions like anti-Semitism and things like that, which don't actually oppose the thing that the exact thesis supports. But generally speaking, definitely in this case, anarchism can be defined in opposition to statism. However, the problem I see is this: what you see as an elegant solution is to a problem, but I derive a different solution because I don't see the same problem you see. For example, you think, well, okay, whenever we're talking about politics, we're talking about power. In economics, scholars study how resources are allocated. In politics, you study how power is allocated. That's what it boils down to. And interestingly enough, in some of your videos, I think even in this video, you mentioned just this idea of what is a government if it's people, but it's more than people. It's perception. It's power. And that's critical to it's greater than its parts. It's something more powerful. But we'll get to that in a moment. That's and I'll provide argumentation for that maybe in a later video. And actually, incidentally, that was the main point of your video, to get at a definition of government. I'm not going to do this now because it's a big question, but I'm going to get right at this. So again, you see this continuum where you have statism, all this power located in the state apparatus, and anarchy. And because you see statism as moral hypocrisy, and there's a lot of corruption, and other things you outline, the solution, which I think is very elegant, is going to be in relation to what you perceive as the problem. We're talking about power. You see power as located in the state. I disagree with this, and this goes back to another video I did, which you've probably seen. And okay, so I view power as ultimately determined by socioeconomic well-being. I'm a structuralist, or a Marxist to some extent. Not that I agree with the solutions Marxism offers, but I definitely agree with the analysis it provides for understanding how economics trumps politics. And essentially, public policy, that is, what governments do and don't do, is ultimately a reflection and echo of the capitalist elite. So in my view, as opposed to this view where all this power is in states, no, I view all power is in capital. That is, multinational corporations, transnational corporations, the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, domestic capitalists, etc. I view that power is ultimately located, and there is a struggle, there's class conflict. Power is ultimately located in the structure of the system, and that system is hierarchical, both at the international level and the domestic level. It's hierarchical, and it's highly stratified, which is to say that if you're at the bottom rung of the ladder, that is, if you're a person who is marginalized, who, just look at environmental policy. I mean, where do these hazardous waste dumps get put? Where do the nuclear plants get put? They all get put in areas with people who, are poor and don't have much money. Okay, there's a big correlation between that sort of thing. It's just one more example. Of course, you don't see, big rich communities next to hazardous waste sites. You just don't see it. They get stuck. The poor people get stuck, having to absorb the environmental and health effects of those sorts of things. Just one example, but there's countless examples. But the idea is that power is highly stratified. If you're at the bottom rung of the ladder, you're not going to have as much power to affect politics as someone who's, you know, a capitalist elite or a multinational corporation armed with a battery of lobbying machinery, public relations firms, propaganda machinery. You know, how was, for example, how, you know, even going back to the election of President Bush, right? You know, or even Obama and the candidates now. Like, look how much, hundreds of millions of dollars they're pumping into their campaigns. It's incredible, right? So, and of course, you know, there's going to be paybacks. You know, you could do a historical case study and analyze politicians who were, you know, put in power by capitalist interests and ultimately, you know, paid them back. That's their bread and butter. You can analyze Russia, you can analyze the United States. You know, United States out 2000 for the war in Iraq, who was paid back, right? Halliburton, Cheney was the former CEO of Halliburton. All of Bush's Texas oil men, right? They all reaped the benefits, and they helped finance his campaign. So, and even, you know, one might go as far, especially with the case of America. This is different in other countries, but with America, one might even make the case that Parliament is bought. Parliament is privatized. It's commoditized. It's like baseball cards. These politicians are like baseball cards. I mean, you just buy them. What's the going rate? Okay, you know, they're just figureheads. Because I view power as embedded in the structure of the system. All power stems from socioeconomic well-being and where you're situated on that hierarchy. Therefore, public policy is ultimately, or governments therefore, is ultimately a plaything of multinational corporations. Governments are a puppet of multinational corporations. The purpose, let's get a purpose. The purpose, for practical terms, the purpose of governments, of parliament, is to represent elite capitalist interests. Therefore, you just see statism. Okay, there's power in the state, and you know it's corrupt, and this power is unjust, and it's divided from society, and they're not representing our interests, and therefore the solution is anarchy, and you know, it's very unrealistic, number one. But number two, it's good. I mean, it's intellectually intriguing, but you know, it's not very realistic. And I can make that argument. I'll maybe make it in the next video. Why anarchy is, first of all, we're naturally industrial and social beings. There will never be anarchy. Humans seek order in everything. That's basically the quintessential definition of science, right? To find order and find patterns and review. Because you're very caught up on political power, the solution is in reflection of the problem. For me, the problem is class conflict, and therefore the solution is much more radical and involves the people. And I'm not a communist apologist or anything. I think that the ideal society is definitely Sweden, and I'm for social democracy. That is, a substantive democracy, one with high levels of participation, high levels of accountability, and high levels of economic equality. Economic equality can't be stressed enough. In the United States, what good is democracy when you have 50 million people walking around without health insurance, right? That's not in their interest, and that's where we get at the representational democracy, right? That is subpar. And so this leads to my next video: is government representational? I'm going to make that right now.